they realized they didn't have a leg to stand on. It was science that won the day, basically. I was accused of spreading misinformation for simply being a witness to what I saw in my own patients. The college brought charges against me for allegedly spreading misinformation, for going public on what the shots did to my own patients, and they considered that to be misinformation. And so by the grace of God, they dropped all of the charges shortly before the trial. I had recruited a fantastic lawyer called Lee Turner from Kelowna, British Columbia, and we had got the help of 8 world experts that were going to deal with each one of the accusations against me. And so I'd expressed concern about myocarditis and fertility issues in women because of the spikes in the ovaries, and the number of vaccine deaths and risk to children, and using ivermectin as an alternative to the vaccines to keep people safe from COVID, all these things. And my 8 expert witnesses produced such superb expert testimony that when the college saw it, because you have to submit what evidence you're going to use at trial, when they saw what they were up against, the first thing they did was to apply for judicial notice, which is a legal tactic where they get the court to declare certain facts irrefutable. So they wanted the court to declare that the shots were safe and effective because they were approved by Health Canada, and that was irrefutable because Health Canada had approved it. And so if they had granted them judicial notice, none of the expert testimonies and we had almost 1,000 pages of top-notch scientific evidence from these 8 people, none of that would have been able to have been presented in court. And they didn't succeed in getting judicial notice, so they just dropped everything. So it was weight of evidence, really. It was weight of evidence that they didn't want. They realized they didn't have a leg to stand on. It was science that won the day, basically.
And the only reason that they have given me for why they dropped the charges is that they said that this process has already fulfilled its purpose as acting as a deterrent to every other doctor out there who might wish to spread misinformation. This is the Canada that we live in. Since then, legislation has been brought in BC under Bill 36, now called the Health Practitioners and Occupations Act, that any doctor who is guilty of misinformation gets a $200,000 fine plus 6 months in jail. Not only that, as a doctor in BC, if they claim to have received an anonymous complaint, they can instantly suspend your medical license without any investigation. This is medical tyranny on steroids. No doctor in their right mind should be practicing in British Columbia under that kind of draconian legislation, but it is now law in British Columbia.
Conferences like this are important because people need to be inspired and encouraged. There's so many despondent people who can see our freedoms being steadily eroded by layer upon layer of just legislation that the government continuously, they never seem to ever take away a law. They just add more and more layers of restrictions upon us. If somebody doesn't understand, I mean, I did that because I believe it was my ethical duty as a doctor to protect my patients and to protect the wider public from the misinformation that they were getting from public health and from the media. And so I had everything to lose and nothing to gain by what I did. I paid a heavy price and made a huge sacrifice to basically stand on moral integrity and say to public health and to the government and to the College of Physicians and Surgeons that it is not right to do this to people. And my evidence was what I saw in all of my vaccine-injured patients. And I've got a small one-man practice with 32 vaccine-injured people in it, just from the COVID shots, not talking about all the other vaccines. So So I'm simply a witness of what I've seen and heard. That's all. I think ultimately this is a spiritual war against humanity. And I think that all of these political leaders that seem to have become our enemies are just puppets in a puppet show. And I don't think they really realize what they're doing. Never before in the history of humanity have we seen every single nation follow the same deception of tyranny, of governments trampling on the rights of their people, of forced injections, all these restrictions, businesses being destroyed by lockdowns, and nations being plunged into massive debts that they will never repay. I mean, Justin Trudeau doubled the national debt of Canada in about 14 months, the first 14 months of this pandemic. So this is a war against humanity where every nation has marched in lockstep. And a lot of people are feeling a bit hopeless, that they feel powerless. And so I think events like this are so important because they hear from people who have made a difference, who show what people can do and have done. Not only in terms of being informed and educated, but in terms of being inspired and encouraged. Because I always go back to that quote by Edmund Burke, all that is needed for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And so every one of us can do something in our little sphere, whatever it might be.
One of the speakers this morning very aptly stated that the greatest fear that the Canadian government has is the Canadian people. And every one of us has the power to say no, and there comes a time when we have to refuse to comply. I was given a gag order very early on when I expressed concerns about the safety of the COVID vaccines. I was given a gag order by the medical authorities that I worked under, telling me that I was not allowed as a doctor to say anything negative about the COVID vaccines. And I refused to comply with that, because I would be failing my patients and the people of Canada if I complied with that gag order. Because doctors have a duty to protect the public and to stand on moral integrity. So sometimes you just have to say no, I will not comply.